The official opposition criticizing President Cyril Ramaphosa's reluctance, let's call it, to answer questions about the 2020 robbery at his Phala Phala game farm. Ramaphosa was answering MPs on key issues in a Q&A session in Parliament yesterday. DA Leader John Steenhuisen has likened the theft at Ramaphosa's farm to the Nkandla scandal that rocked Jacob Zuma's presidency. He's also labelled Parliament a toothless lapdog that's been protecting ANC members. For more, let's speak to the man himself. John Steenhuisen joins us now via our vid-link. And John, it's great to see you. Thanks indeed for making time to chat to us. The president yesterday, as part of his response, saying he wants to give law enforcement time and space before giving his side of the story. In other incidents, that may be acceptable, but in this case, why is it not good enough?
Well, I think it's a complete sham, actually, because this is not a new case. It's been 2 years ago that this occurred. What more could the police authorities do now than they haven't been able to do in the last 2 years? The other point to make is that the president keeps saying he's going to cooperate fully with institutions. He was late in supplying his answers to the public protector, and she eventually had to threaten to subpoena him. We now know that he was also late in providing answers to the Reserve Bank. The key point here is the president's primary accountability mechanism is Parliament. That's what the Constitution says. And what I cannot fathom is that why he cannot tell the law enforcement authorities the truth and at the same time tell Parliament. If the story is the same, it won't matter where you're telling the truth. It'll be consistent. But it seems the president is intent on not answering to Parliament, which he's constitutionally obliged to do so, on this Phala Phala matter. We saw last night the ANC's defence squad once again using their parliamentary majority and using a compliant speaker to shield a sitting president from the tough questions that he should be answering in Parliament.
Yeah, absolutely. The president mentioned yesterday that he's willing to kind of subject himself to any kind of parliamentary process. In fact, Mondli Nkandla, who we spoke to earlier on this morning, echoing those sentiments, suggesting that perhaps Parliament should initiate some kind of formal process to have the president answer, because they say they're not open to this free-for-all type interrogation. Firstly, what's your response to that? And do you reckon that Parliament is constituted such that a kind of process like that can, in fact, be instituted?
Well, firstly, Mr. Nkandla is talking nonsense. The executive cannot decide how oversight is done of them by Parliament. It is a free-for-all, and it's rightly so a free-for-all, because that's what the Constitution says it should be. We live in a multi-party democracy with the rules of Parliament that allow for opposition parties to ask the tough questions of the executive. And if you want to know why that's important and why it should be allowed to happen, just read what the Zondo Commission contains in its findings, where Parliament was not doing its job, holding the executive accountable. So I think that's very important. Secondly, if that is the case, Mr. Nkandla must tell us why they are not supporting our call for an ad hoc committee in Parliament to probe the Phala Phala matter. Right from the beginning of this, I wrote to the Speaker and said to her, Madam Speaker, this particular issue transverses a number of committees, police, intelligence, finance committee, as well as a variety of others. Let's form an ad hoc committee, a multi-party ad hoc committee. Let's call the president. Let's call those people involved, and let's hear their side of the story, and then we can make a decision about how to proceed. Instead, the Speaker hid behind sending it to the State Security Committee, the JSCI, and now very embarrassingly, and leaving massive egg on her face, they've written back to her to say, sorry, it's not our job to probe this. And neither do we have the capacity. So all of her attempts to try and prevent parliamentary accountability have now resulted in a situation where we're back where we were in the Nkandla debacle, with the ANC majority in Parliament using their numbers to protect a president from answering the tough questions that he should be obliged to answer in terms of the Constitution. And that should worry all of us.
Right. It was interesting to hear the president speaking yesterday about some people, unnamed people, who are looking to gain mileage over this. I mean, at the heart of this, of course, is around ensuring there's transparency and accountability. But would you concede to this idea that there's also a bit of political expediency in some instances from some people who are looking to capitalize on what may very well be a crisis for the president?
Well, that may be the case, but who's caused the situation? The President has caused this situation. It wasn't the opposition or other people who stuffed money and foreign currency into furniture in his home. It's not the opposition that used the State Security Agency and the Presidential Protection Unit to pursue the private business interests of the President. It's a trap that he set for himself. And he's got nobody else to blame in this situation other than himself. His handling of the situation as well has also led to a situation where there's now been this massive escalation and interest in the matter. Had he just come out when the revelations broke and said, South Africa, this is my side of the story, this is what happened. That is what a person who's got nothing to hide does, and that is the behavior that they conduct. The President has done exactly the opposite. He's got the ostrich head in the sand approach, pretending that if he doesn't talk about it, this whole thing's going to go away. And in that vacuum of the President not dealing with the situation and taking citizens, the media, and Parliament into his confidence, has now allowed that vacuum to be filled by speculation and conjecture. And the longer the President keeps quiet about the matter, the more this is going to continue to grow.
Yeah, speaking about handling situations, the President yesterday is being accused of filibustering in some instances in order to avoid answering this question. However, on the other side of that, we saw once again the National Assembly descending into chaos because of ways through which some MPs were responding to this moment. That's raised questions this morning around how MPs can hold each other accountable in order to ensure that we do at the very least have a fighting chance of getting answers that the public also have an interest in hearing.
Well, let me be clear. I think the disruptive tactics that we used yesterday don't help us. Ironically as well, it was one of the opposition party's suggestions that allowed the President to exit the chamber yesterday without having to answer those questions.
Right.
But let me come back to the bull point here. The reason you elect a Speaker in the House is to maintain order and discipline in the House. And frankly, Ms. Mapisa Nkandla is completely out of her depth when it comes to managing the House. Just compare the scenes in the House that we saw yesterday to the skillful way in which someone like Thandi Modise, for instance, was able to navigate tough situations. The Speaker lost complete control. She got hysterical herself. She entered the debate yesterday, which is unprecedented. She was part of the verbal sparring that was taking place in the House, and it has not helped. The Speaker needs to maintain order and discipline in the House, and when a Speaker loses control of the House, and members of Parliament can see that, well, then it results in a free-for-all. So yes, there is MP behavior, and that must be condemned and it must be dealt with. But the Speaker needs to take responsibility for the fact that she lost complete control yesterday of the House and ended up actually preventing members of Parliament like myself from discharging my constitutional duty to ask the President questions, because I had a question on Phala Phala, a follow-up question, that I wasn't allowed to ask. I had a question on the last question on energy, which I was not allowed to ask. And so the Speaker, in pandering to the behavior of the disruptors, has actually prevented MPs who are there and serious about their job from being able to conduct their responsibilities in terms of the rules of Parliament and the Constitution.
Dear Leader John Steenhuisen, loud and clear this morning, and dare I add, I think many people will agree with the sentiments you've expressed this morning. Appreciate your time. John Steenhuisen, once again, the leader of the Democratic Alliance. All right, if the Speaker of the National Assembly, by the way, wants to speak to us, we are more than willing to make time for her, at the very least, to be able to respond to what's being said in a context where I think it's a far-gone conclusion that this issue is a matter of national importance.